Hello and welcome to Conversations for the Soul, one good sip at a time with Dr. Angie and Yashica B, the Motivator. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. We have an exciting evening for us today because we have a guest with us and we are looking forward to having that discussion and that conversation. But until then, I just want to say hello. I'm going to turn things over to Miss Yashica B, the Motivator, so that she can greet you. But this is the show where we have real women have real talk about real issues. Thank you for joining us. We look forward to having you at this point in time. Like, share, and subscribe. We really appreciate it when you do those things. We thank you for joining us, and we ask that right now that you plan on getting involved in the conversation. Give us your feedback, any input you may have, any questions you may have. We look forward to hearing from you, so please join us. And again, like, share, and subscribe. Here's Yashica B.
Thank you, Dr. Angie. Thank you very much. Tonight we have a special guest. It's Miss Lydia, and that's Lydia. If I mess it up, she's gonna correct me. And I'm honored to have her on tonight because I met this young lady maybe about 3 weeks ago in a local restaurant here in South Carolina, and she and her friend, and the conversation was so good as far as the age difference between the three of us and the things that she wanted to know, the questions she wanted to ask of I'm going to say, the more mature crowd. Lydia currently is a mother of two, and she works for the state of South Carolina. So without further ado, I don't want to give a whole lot about Lydia. Let her tell her own story, and I want to bring her on board. And thank you again, everybody, for tuning in, for watching. Please like and share. And again, let's bring Lydia, Dr. Angie, back up. Hi, Lydia. And I hope
Hey,
I'm trying to say it right. I'm remembering the G, not a D. Lydia.
that's right. You did well. You did well. It's
Okay,
Ligia.
and yeah, so again, we met about 3 weeks ago. We did. Well, I don't know if it was a little bit longer than that or not because so much is going on. And the conversations that was being had was like awesome. And I was like, man, this is good for a conversation. For the soul, which is what Dr. Andy and I do. We touch into topics and conversations that we have on an everyday basis. Some of us. And we want to know a little bit more because some people don't get that deep in the conversation. So we don't take anything out. We don't pull anything off the table. We just like to indulge in deep conversations about life things. And a lot of times that is on either current events or what's going on with us as women. So take it away. That's it. Dr. Angie
Absolutely.
coming back on screen. She's back in the background. There she goes.
Okay.
While you
Eh,
talk
eh,
a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and bring myself back up on Facebook. Go ahead.
Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I brought my screen up on Facebook because I can't
Yeah,
see
I'm not up on Facebook for some reason. I don't know what's going on with that. But anyway,
it. Okay. All
let me
right.
see.
So, how are you tonight, Lydia?
I'm great. And you know, you're absolutely right. We were having that deep conversation about, minorities and us as women, younger women, versus older women. And we came across certain questions that we wanted to know.
All right,
When
I
we
got to
get,
stop you right there. You said old women. We not old women.
We're
I
seasoned.
said, I said older, as in we're
Oh,
knowledgeable.
All right. Okay.
I thought we was going to have it out right here, right now. But we are seasoned young women. Okay, go right
Knowledgeable, strong women is what I would say.
ahead. Okay, sorry about that. Go ahead. I'm going to
No,
bring
so
you. Go ahead.
yep. So I was just curious about how, the difference, and not that much of a difference because like you said, you're not old women, you're just older, more knowledgeable. For myself, I'm currently in my 30s, but as Jessica mentioned, it was also my friend who was in her 20s. So we had a lot of questions for you guys, and we was just curious to see what your points were about it. So that's what brings me here today. I want you to answer some questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It is always a very interesting conversation when you have different generations that are speaking to one another. And the of this conversation is that we can learn from one another. There's so much that we as the older generation can learn from the younger generation, and vice versa. The younger generation can certainly learn from the older generation. But the one thing that I want us to remember is that we are all in this together. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and bring in Yashica B, the motivator, and have her to ask her first question of Lydia, and then we'll go from there.
One thing I can say, I would just really I really enjoyed the conversation and the fact the interest that Lygia had and her friend say her name, Lygia. Your friend, is she here?
Kishana.
Kishana. The
Kishana.
question,
Yeah.
and a lot of times when we look at the younger generation, we wonder, are they even listening to us? Do they care what we're saying and what we can offer, and especially our young ladies, because I'm telling you, it seems like we have a something has happened where we have really either left them out to dry and they're hanging on their own, or and they're choosing that lifestyle. But you don't have to do that. So can I ask this question to you? You're about, I think it's about 10 years difference between us. Do you feel like that gap left you all behind?
I would say in a sense it did, because coming from, I guess, my parents not really talking about certain things, I would say that they did omit some information that I would have wished it could have been provided now.
Hmm. Hmm.
So there's a little bit of a gap in
I
there.
now for that about omitting information. Now I'm not gonna say my parents omitted it; they just didn't talk about it. Cause and then you end up learning from your friends and see. Back then, I'm not that old, but however, we didn't have social media to teach us. We learned from our friends. So now everything's at your fingertips. The internet, you have everything is literally at your fingertips. Where SpongeBob, I'm talking about the SpongeBob used to be SquarePants. Now you can type in SpongeBob and you get some of everything that you can even imagine under that name. But when we were coming up, it was innocent enough to say that we did have those things that we did not want to dabble into. We knew they were there, but it wasn't so accessible as it is for the younger people now. And we valued friends. We valued family. I think with me, thinking back, the values and the morals changed. I used to say that we were fighting so hard to save the young men that we forgot about the daughters. That we left the girls out there to fend for themselves, and now the girls are going just as hard as the guys, but they're introducing themselves as a B, as a this, as a that, and whereas we wouldn't. I mean, I don't understand how we can take those derogatory statements and glorify them in any type of way. What are your thoughts?
I agree. It's funny that you actually mentioned that because I had a conversation with someone else at the local restaurant who was a male who ended up saying that he believed that whoever he met at a club or at a bar as a young lady was considered a derogatory person. So here I am thinking, like, that's some sort of stereotype. So a woman can't go to the club or to the bar to have a drink, even if she's a graduate student or in school or, working and trying to make a better life for herself. So it's just so crazy how they think of us, young, older.
Yeah, it is very interesting because I think over time we have gone overboard with trying to make sure that we are equal. And quite honestly, I don't believe that we should be equal. I believe that men are men and women are women, and whatever is in between is in between. But I don't believe that a woman, and I'm going to get in trouble for this, I know. Um, we're getting messages that we're echoing, so I'm trying to deal with that. I hope that fixes it. But I do want to say that I know I'm going to get in trouble for saying this, but I don't believe that women can do everything men can do. And I know for certain that men can't do everything that women can do because, number one, men cannot carry babies. So that changes the game completely. And it has always changed the game. Now, have we been able to enter into male dominated arenas such as the military and so forth? Absolutely. And I think the military question is one that Yashica can speak to because she is a vet. So, what do you say about that, Yashica?
I absolutely agree with you, and I'm not going to say I'm sorry to say because that's the truth. We are not equal. We wasn't created to be equal because if that's the case, then when he took the rib from Adam, he wouldn't have put him to sleep. He'd have had two already standing, right? But Adam was missing something. He was lonely, so he had to take from him to create her which whom is hope. Now, but that didn't mean for us to integrate and become him. He is he, and we are our. Now, when we get to the military, the aspect of it is like, yes, we're not the same. Now, do we want equal pay? Yes, but it's not the same to say that we can do the same things men do. And I feel like once we, for whatever reason, in the U.S., when we get a little piece of something, we go the mile with it. We're trying to expand it in all across the board, and it doesn't work like that. There's freedom of speech, there's freedom of this, freedom of expression, freedom of sexuality. Y'all have gone too far because when in all that freedom, you lost morals, respect,
Mm-hmm.
value. And that to me, that's more important than I trying to be so much as equal as a man. I respect you as a man, respect me as a woman. That's all we're asking for. But when we're crossing this line saying that we can do just as much, now going to the military and see this is the thing, because when we start mixing these worlds, first of all, the military should never mix with the public, civilians, because that they're coming from two different mindsets. However, if you allow political and the public to integrate into the military, when these people did not serve, they should not be able to come in and give you anything because they are not serving. I remember in the 90s where they were fighting so hard, these two pilots, oh, we want to be equal, we want to be this, we want to be that. For the women, I was actually in a forward support unit in Germany, whereas being a female, you could only be in certain types of units. Now, which was perfectly fine for me, but they fought. We want to be in combat. We want to be in this. But see, those two ladies fought for this for the sake of being recognized. But yet, after it changed, you left the rest of us hanging because now we have to go do these missions that we weren't ready for and we didn't want to do them because your big mouth, two officers back in the day who did this. And you changed it for the rest of it, and we had to suffer behind it. And yes, I'm saying suffer behind it
Mm-hmm.
because if we were equal, then why is it just 10 years ago, VA it hadn't even been 10 years. They just allowed for women to be able to get pap smears in their platform. But we're talking about equality. No, it's not because it's just so much to this thing. And when you jump from one extreme, you jump to another, and it dictates on how other people are living. Now, do I feel like a woman should be in combat? No, I don't. Want to know why? Because we forget about that simple thing. The basic of a man is to protect that woman. That's basic instinct. I don't care what animal is out there. It could be a dog and another dog, a cat and a cat, a bear and a bear. That male is going to protect that female, that pride. So if you're on a mission, that and it's you may be behind enemy lines and there are male troops and you have that one female who's gonna fall short. I don't care who you are, yes you are, because our bodies are not equipped. Now we do have some massive women that can do it, but that percentage is so low versus the rest of the masses, and it's just not fair. So anyway, back to what I'm saying. And then if she falls, so suppose you had a woman in Vietnam back in the day. And though the Viet Cong, they were they defeated us. And I don't care what nobody, they defeated us. So therefore, because we weren't equipped for that type of war in the United States, we can go back and do history on this. So if you have the Viet who could tell how weak the troops were by their poop, can you imagine what they could tell by your cycle?
Ooh,
It's a tough
wow.
question.
And it don't stop just because you put a uniform on and step in the field. You still had that return. And that's the part that got me because okay, you just that would compromise a mission because animals can smell women on cycle. Blood is very distinctive. You don't and they have keen noses. And those in the Vietnam were trained to look at your footsteps, at your feet. That's why you have to cover it up and take it with you. Did y'all know that? Can you imagine? carrying your blood, your pads for miles and miles at a time alone with, who gonna carry it for you? Then you're gonna get weak and you drop it. Who got to pick it up? See, that's
Wow.
and so women will comfort to me if you're on certain areas that just don't need to be. Women should never be in infantry. They should never be a foot soldier because of the fact that you will compromise the mission. And if you're any woman out there who's trying to say, "Oh, I can do it," know what? You're selfish because at the end of the day, we're trying to win, not lose. And you in the way will cause us to lose. And that's just the bottom line. That's
Wow.
look. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Wow. And that comes from the out of the mouth of a military woman. So that's something that we as non-military, as civilians, would never think of. I would never think of that as being part of what you had to do, the sacrifices that, now I know there's sacrifices that have to be made and adjustments that have to be made. Clearly, I know that. But to think of the fact that, okay, now I have to carry my supplies with me, used or unused, not something I would ever think about. So,
But if you're in the field, where no toilets out there, where you gonna put it?
right, right, you're absolutely right. But
No,
as a civilian, you would never ever think about that. That's just
no.
something that wouldn't come across your mind. Now, I have said to myself, "Oh, I wonder what they do when they're on their cycle," but I never thought, "Oh, you can't put it anywhere." You know what I mean? I just never gave that a thought.
I see Pelly over here. I said, Pelly, you remember the BDUs with those big side pockets where it went? Right in that pocket.
Yeah, yeah. And I can imagine that wasn't the most sanitary thing.
You didn't smell good either, no.
Um,
You can't stay out. You can't stay out of the field because your cycle's on. So
right.
so if you're training like that to be forward support and main support, and then you're talking about, okay, now we're gonna do this extra stuff. Come on, that's just too much. That's
Yeah.
too much. And then also the females who were in ranger school. See, they don't tell the whole story about that either. Because now they passed the ranger. Yeah, they passed the test that they gave them for them to pass. You have men 300 who try 300 and 400 time and hundreds and 200 dropping out at a time because they can't even keep up with it. And you mean to tell me a cycle bearing female was able to? Come on now. It don't pass the common sense test. But it's what we want to feed to the public, then that's what they want to eat. Somebody said
Yashica, I know you have lots to say about this, but I think that's a conversation for a different day. We're going to go ahead and pull
exactly.
Lydia in
Listen,
because,
but before we do that, listen, somebody wrote on the side when you mentioned earlier, it just went away. Women need to stay at home. I can't see it on my thing of who that was. That women's rights was a mistake. Women need to stay at home. I don't know. Oh,
So we
so what
shouldn't we shouldn't
are
be
they
at the
serious?
bar.
Huh?
They're saying we shouldn't go to the bar or have a drink with our friends.
Was
We
that
should
what
be
they're
home.
commenting from your comment? So yeah, bring that back up, Andy. Can you see it?
why are we giving that attention?
Women's right was a mistake. Women need to stay home because I think it's just that a joke. There must be a hacker. Hey hacker, how are you? Move right on off.
Yeah. So anyway, Lydia, I was just wondering, you said that there were conversations that were not had with you that you really wish would have been had with you. So what's a topic that you wish that your mother would have had with you or the elders during your time?
So I was brought up, and I'm going to give you a little quick scenario of this specific situation where something should have been discussed. So I was 12 years old. I was going to middle school, came home one day and had gotten my period. And I was scared. I had no idea what this stuff was because at that time, my parents or my mother didn't have that conversation with me. So I made it my point with my kids to have those conversations that were not had with my parents. And thankfully, it turned out much better because she was pretty much prepared when her time came. But when it comes to that, your body, how it changes, even sex, those were things we did not have in my household, in a Hispanic household. I don't know what the reason was for it, but I wish it would have been had. That makes
Yeah,
sense.
definitely. I could see that. And I'm not sure, did you get that education in school? Did they talk about your cycle in school?
Not that
You
I remember. I mean, I don't remember
would
having like
remember.
the yeah, that first conversation was in biology class, and that was in high school. That was pretty much way
Wow.
past the point where, you had your changes. Um, so yes,
And
it did come up eventually, but
It was a
not
little too
not
late, huh? High school
exactly.
is too late because
I can
guess
relate
what?
to
They're
that.
starting at 9 and 10 years old now.
Oh wow,
So,
yeah, I can relate to that,
Exactly.
Lydia, because
yeah.
we didn't.
So, go ahead, Yashika.
I was just saying I can relate to that. We didn't either. It's just we were just observant. So when my cycle came on, I hid it. I thought something happened. And I never told that story before, but I did. I didn't know what was going on, so I took them. But for whatever reason, you just figure out to do something, hide it, clean it, whatever.
Mhm.
But you're right, and then it's after it happens. Then, oh, by the way, let us talk about this. So I don't know if that was. I'm from Alabama. I don't know if that was a deep rooted Southern thing, or if you're saying you're Hispanic. Dr. Angie, what about you? Is that
So
Alabama?
in New Jersey, we discuss it in fourth and fifth grade. Generally, fifth grade is when they really go into it. It's casually mentioned. The school nurse comes into the classroom and introduces the concept, shows movies, shows us how to use the supplies. And that's generally in fifth grade. And that is where that conversation really starts. And then girls, I think, then go home and talk to their parents about it then. But for the most part, parents don't really talk about it until they have that conversation in school. And I think it was really different this year. I'm wondering how things went this year because no one was in school. So that had to be a real adjustment for anyone who had that situation before they got a chance to hear about it from the school nurse or whatever. In my household, we speak kind of matter of factly about it because I have four girls. So I just kind of speak matter of factly about it. And I explain to my even though I have a 9 year old, and I explained to her long before it was necessary to explain, but just in case, so that she was not alarmed when and if her period came on at a young age before she got a chance to have that discussion in school. And that's part of my background. That's not necessarily because of my parental side. See, I don't know about that from coming from a parent perspective, but as a school counselor, that's just something that I knew needed to take place. So I made it my business to kind of talk to my girls about it, not in depth, but to give them enough to know that, okay, if you start bleeding from your vagina, there's nothing wrong with you. This is just part of your becoming a woman, and explaining that. And one of the things that I did for each of my girls was give them a book about puberty, and I gave that book to them usually the Christmas that they turn 9. So whatever Christmas before they turn 9, I gave them that book and suggested that they read the book and then come to me and ask me any questions. That seemed to work pretty well, I guess. And then the thing about it is my younger girls then found themselves talking to my older girls more so than they talk to me. So I don't know. But it's just one of those things. And then in terms of, you know, men need to know as much about our periods as we do. I mean, because what happens with our cycle affects them. Peace affects them. Getting someone pregnant affects them. So I think men need to know, boys need to know too. In our school system, when they have that conversation, they separate the boys from the girls, and the boys don't talk about that. The boys talk about wet dreams. They don't talk about periods. But I think they should have that conversation because I think it's helpful information and it should not be taboo. This is something that happens to our bodies. This is something that is going to happen no matter what we do, it's going to happen. So therefore, we should have that conversation. We should not act like this is a shameful thing. This is something that should not be discussed. This is not a taboo issue. So it's part of life. It's part of growing up. And girls need to know that when you get your period, now you have become a young woman that can produce a child. And that makes a huge difference, because look at all of the women, all of the girls in high school that began to have sex and got pregnant because they had no idea that having sex is what was going to cause them to get pregnant. So it's something that we need to talk about.
Somebody can take up one topic and speak on it for 30 minutes, like me.
Yeah.
Like me. Yeah, I see that one. That one's dear and true, or new and true, dear, whatever it is. But you're right. That is something that needs to be. I don't even know, because like Ace now is 11, and so I have no clue what the schools are doing. What, again, and even as parents, because I find it all to fall on the parents, and then the school should just be a like a attaboy, like a enforcer. It shouldn't be the sole purpose. I mean, of responsibility of the school, but it happens. We put a lot on the school, and now
Yeah. And then in terms of sex, like, how do we talk to our parents about sex? How do our parents talk to us about sex before we get, like, when does that conversation take place? When, like, we say the talk, but honestly, it should never be the talk. It should be a continual building conversation that we have. We should talk little tiny things at a time, introduce concepts about that at a time, a little bit at a time, and then grow into that. And then every child is different, and every child has a different perspective. So as they are talking about it, make them feel comfortable asking you questions. Don't make them feel like they can't have that conversation. And now, we never want our kids to see sex on TV. That's something that we try to protect them from and shield them from. But when that happens, we have to be willing to have that conversation with them. As uncomfortable as it is, we do need to have that conversation. I don't know. What do you feel about that?
You're right. They're going to do it regardless if we don't have that conversation and they happen to see it on TV. I mean, I've come across that issue with my son already. He's 14. He's curious. He wants to know more. And so, like you said, prior to that situation, I was already feeding him a couple things like, hey, at a certain age, a girl can have a baby. Make sure you protect yourself, as comfortable as it can try to sound, I guess, but it's only
And
so
how many children think that the babies come from the stork? That somebody just delivers this baby?
and that's old school. They know better now.
They don't know.
No, that I think that went out soon as we got free will with this internet. They don't, and you can't even tell nobody about no birds and the bees. You can do that. No, that stuff is gone now. The stork, the birds and the bees, all that. They just know straight. And these songs.
I
Oh my
mean,
God.
they can find that information out now. Technology
Right.
has allowed the opportunity to make, do a little Google search or ask your friends. I mean,
What'd
the
you say?
friends,
Technology? Yeah.
yeah.
I
It
know.
used to be we could ask a friend, but now it's not even ask a friend. It's like, hey Siri, hey Google. That's what I was saying about the SpongeBob thing. It's not even that anymore. You could type in, they could want to watch a cartoon, and boom. And it's crazy with children's cartoons, that why would people do that with the children, with the kids? I don't get that. Why would you have something like that under SpongeBob? And I know that because I have a little one. When Ace was small, he typed it in, and if you don't be careful, you're gonna get a different type of SpongeBob. It means something else. So that's the thing. And that was a rude. I mean, that was an ugly awakening. I didn't like that at all. He was too little to understand it, but hey, I didn't like it. But we can't even censor stuff anymore. What is that? You know?
Yeah, it is very difficult to censor things. The whole technology age does make it extremely difficult. And I have to say that, I'm aware of less than high school aware of young ladies actually going online to find out how to have an orgasm. Like, what do I do? What isn't, like they're getting this information that really is too much for their brain to handle at that young age. But unfortunately, they have it, and it's everywhere. You can't even watch a TV commercial without seeing some inference to sex. And it's just one of those things that we just need to pay attention to when our children have that the questions in mind. We need to pay attention to how we answer those questions, because if they ask one question and we don't answer it in a matter of fact way, or we make them feel uncomfortable, they're not going to ask anymore. And we have to get to a point that we can be comfortable with having those conversations, even if we say, you know what, why don't you talk to your older sister about that? Or why don't you talk to so-and-so about that? Now, it shouldn't have to be that way, but just in case it is, give them permission to have that conversation, so they're not getting all of their information only from the internet, because only from the internet is just not a healthy thing. I want to just bring this message up real quick from Mr. Williams. He says, I was a single father raising a set of twins, a boy and a girl. And it was hard to discuss biology with both of our twins, but I did. So that's a teacher speaking. Now, when his children were coming up, he was a teacher. So it makes it a little bit different, because as teachers, we understand the educational part of it. But as a parent who's not in the education arena, or is not in the medical arena, do they understand? Do they figure out that, hey, this is a conversation I need to have? And with the way that food is, the hormones in food, our kids are getting bigger every day. Like, they're 9-year-olds with breast, and it's just too much. So we have to have these conversations, and I just don't know what to do. I don't know how to make that clear, but
you're absolutely right. I'm experiencing myself. I have an 11-year-old who looks, like she's 15. I didn't believe she was 11 when she traveled the other day, because she's developed so quickly. And it's not just sex, it's also drugs. How do you talk to them about drugs, and how not to fall into peer pressure? It's a lot.
It really is.
Yeah, it's like it brings the tough conversations right up front, because we don't even have time. We don't even have time as parents to think about it, because really, by the time you said you made it a second thought, somebody else gave it a full force conversation with graphics, and it's sad, but that's just the world we live in. Like you said, technology is it was our friend, and it can be our enemy too. So, especially as moms, trying to do the best we can with our kids.
So one of the suggestions that I would make, I think, is in terms of the internet. Our children know how to get to the internet and get information faster and better than we do. But if we could sit with them and say, let's go through this together, and then ask them questions about it. Is it uncomfortable? Yes, it is uncomfortable. But I think it's just like we have to have those conversations with our young boys of color about how they have to behave in the presence of authority, and how they have to behave when they get stopped in a traffic stop to save their life. We have to be able to have those same uncomfortable, awkward conversations about drugs, about sex, about how people are going to take advantage of you, and how people are going to, I don't know, just things that we have to keep them safe. And I think that's the mindset that we have to put on. We have to keep our children safe. And our children can die from having sex. They can die from having premature babies. They can die. There are things that can happen to our children because we never sat down and had that conversation. So we have to tell them, hey, put your hands on the steering wheel. Just like we have to have that conversation, we have to be able to talk about other things, because it can hurt them and it can change the trajectory of their life. So it's one of those things.
have to have them so much sooner now as well. We can't wait anymore because we can't. You want them to stay small and innocent forever, or at least to they hit 12 or 13. But we can't because that's that age, anywhere between 9, like you said, and 9 all the way up. That's that fragile age right up in there where we want to still let them be a kid for as long as they can. But society has already moved them into teenage and adulthood. It's like they just skip sometimes. So our babies aren't babies anymore. It's almost like you have them. Let me teach you.
Yep.
As soon as you walk, let me start teaching you.
And now we need to have that conversation even about guns because I happen to be very aware of a situation where an eighth grade student shot and killed a seventh grade student. Now, they should not have access to guns, but these kids have access to these guns. Those were children that I could reach out and put my hands on. Those were children that I personally knew. An eighth grade child shot and killed, murdered a seventh grade student. And these are conversations that we have to have. We have to talk to our kids about playing with guns, and gun violence is just crazy. I just heard on the news earlier today that we have had 50 mass shootings this year. We're in April. I mean, this is just incredible to know that these mass shootings are going on. So it's all kinds of subjects that we need to talk about. So real quick, Mr. Williams says it's best for a parent to teach their child instead of the streets or the internet. And yes, that is true. But not every parent is equipped. And I want that parent who is not equipped to recognize the importance of getting that child to somebody who is equipped. Tell them they can talk to the nurse at school or whatever, a trusted aunt or, someone. They've got to have someone that they can trust, that they can ask their questions of and not be judged and not feel that they have said something bad. No matter what the question is, it's got to be something that we can answer for them.
And also, but one thing about that, it brings us because we say talk to somebody, but then we talk about now in our communities, we don't have the nucleus of the families anymore. Families don't gather anymore. Families aren't close anymore. So then that again, that child is almost left behind again. So they're relying more and more on the internet or friends or just something that because usually you always have a if like it's five of us like one of my nieces can be close one of my it's my niece but she can be closer to me than she is to her mom so she can come to me but see this is not as it used to be because we're going farther and farther apart and then and more people don't want you to talk to say anything to the kids. They don't want you talking to them. They don't want you doing this. They don't want you doing that. And it's like, okay, so again, that's what I was telling you earlier, asking you earlier, lady, do you feel like there's a gap and a loss? Something's lost in between these generations because when in the African American community, there are no more big mamas and muddies and because we started having children so young where you have 35-year-olds who are grandmas where you 35 at a grandmama you can't tell me what to do when I got a cold you ain't gonna tell me to go smash up some onions and put some sugar on and something like that. I want to know that type of stuff at the time. I don't want to know go to get some NyQuil that's got alcohol in it. But now we and so that's again that's back to that my sister put it, the village is not attentive or observant, right? And that's when that big thing is like it takes a village. It literally took a village to raise children, but we're so far away from that now with the technology and moving and expanding. So you could used to be where you can go down a block and the whole block is a family. Now we're in neighborhoods and subdivisions and our family my family is 8 hours away in Alabama. I'm the only one here. So those things differ this day and time. And if you trust an adult, you don't know even going to the school with a school nurse. That's one school nurse with 100+ kids. I wouldn't send my child. I wouldn't. I mean, she's overwhelmed. She ain't gonna have time to talk to you. It's like okay, because they and then the counselors and they have the school counselors and they had the regular guidance counselor. They want to put everything on the poor guidance counselor instead of bringing in real counselors. I ain't saying they're not real. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Hey, hey, hey.
I'm, I'm talking about the guidance counselor had at one time their job was school academics doing getting the best. Now you're putting all these behavioral issues on them. That's more than that's not that's okay now. But see, you gave me more work, but you still one body. And whereas
Right.
you still had one per grade, so that's one guidance counselor with 1,300 kids sometimes. And that one kid that's standing out there waiting to talk to you after you done fixed 10 schedules, they done fell through the cracks. So
Right. So true. So very true. That is one of the unfortunate parts about the education system. We have become everything to to children. But at the same time, we have to give them something.
right.
And it's a very strange dichotomy, but we have to figure out how to do this better. We really do. And I don't know what the answer is. I knew the answer. I wish I had that magic wand to make it work. But
It's not going to be a one all do all because every situation is different. Then, because once you get to the situation, you have to remember we have different cultures, we have different areas. Where the schools up north are taught different from schools out at south, east, west. So, as individuals, we have to put that on each other as an individual. We have to do better individually. Whereas sometimes where we have our own children and we don't act like we don't have time for someone else's children. Well, there might be a child bleeding in the street. Well, you know what? We need to stop. And don't worry about the yelling mama coming down the street, talking about why you touching my child. Because see, at the end of the day, the child is the one that's left behind. The mom's just ignorant. Deal with her later. You know? But we have gotten so much away from that because of that stigma, that atmosphere that we created. I ain't saying I did it, but I'm talking the world. We, created it that we're not taking care of one another. We'd rather just walk by. You remember how many videos we've seen of kids in the store and they're by themselves, but people just walk by. Nobody wants to be nosy except me. I tell you, I'm nosy. I don't care.
wow.
'Cause I'm gonna
Wow.
ask some questions.
And she tells you no lie, okay? She's telling the truth.
I'm gonna ask some questions, and you can tell me all day long. You talk too much. You ask me. I don't care. I'd rather hear all that, but what I want to know, I'm gonna find out. And if you don't want to tell me, instead of just say, "Hey, I don't want to tell you that," and I'll be okay with that.
Yes.
So,
So I want to just bring this up real quick because this is a very good point. Mr. Williams says you would be surprised that there are a lot of single fathers out there like myself. I was in a group of single fathers who shared parenting techniques, and I also thank my family for their strong support. So yes, we have to be willing to support one another, like you were saying, and that is critical. And we have to stop having that crab mentality, crab in a barrel mentality, because it's killing us. But it's by design.
right,
We have been taught because we have to protect our children. So on one hand, we say stranger danger, stay away from strangers, and we say that you can trust adults, but then you can't trust adults because of molestation and pedophilia and all these things. There's just so many things. I mean, it's just
even
you got to have the conversations.
yeah,
That's really what it boils down to. And when things happen in our families, we have to stop covering them up and keeping them secret. Molestation grows because we don't talk about it. Rape happens because, number one, some boys don't even know that when a girl says no, that's it. I don't care where she's at. If she says no, that means you stop because somebody hasn't had that conversation with them. So it's not just the girls, it's the boys too. The girls need to know that it's okay to say no. Okay, I was here, I started, but now I'm not feeling it. Okay, so now I have the right to say no, and he should respect that right to say no. So there's just so many different pieces of this conversation that we must have with our children. And like Pele was saying earlier, it includes life, it includes violence, it includes protecting yourself from police brutality, it includes doing the right thing when you're in public and when you're in private. All of these things matter because they change our life. Now, all things do work together for the good eventually, but we could really circumvent so much of the problems that we had simply by having conversations. And that's what Yashica and I talked about when we first decided to start this show. We talked about the fact that there are so many conversations that need to be had that are not being had. And we have to be bold enough and courageous enough to say what it is. We need to have real talk about real issues. And that's where we're talking. That's where this show was birthed. So I want to just
Angie, I do have to.
I see we have some comments on here. It says no is a full sentence. If you ask me, I love that, Pele. It is a full sentence. No. And then no means no from Patricia Harris. So yes. So I want us to understand that this is a conversation that could take place for hours and hours. So we don't have hours and hours, but we do need to understand the importance of having awkward conversations. Tell
And
me.
also, one thing I do want to say this before you jump off of that, because when we're addressing and we're talking, we also need to talk to the single moms out there with boys, because we're saying no means no. But see, boys, moms, single moms, that means you teach them that no means no, and just because, and stop letting them be whatever because it was done to you. You have a very powerful voice to teach your boys, your young men, how to be better or treat women better than the way you was treated, instead of being passive in the situation. Because too many times, because of the moms coming younger and younger, they don't address this with the boys. They just let them do what they want to do, especially in our community, and that's where it needs to stop right there. Because if we in the home, that's why I said I charge it back to each person as an individual. Because if you change the way you look at things, if you shape your mind to say, you know what, yeah, your daddy was slanging and whatever, whatever, but I ain't gonna. He created 1,000 of them, but I ain't gonna have you create 1,002. What you getting ready to do? I'm gonna teach you what not to do because this was done to me. From that perspective, if these women talk to these boys from that perspective, because this is what was done to me, I do believe we wouldn't have that issue, so many issues with boys not knowing that no actually means no, because they're thinking that, well, I got here, however, because it's just so many dynamics to conversations, but responsibility still falls on us individually. I don't care how you look at it. It falls on the individual. How we're gonna create these kids and push them out to society. How we're gonna help correct the issues that we are. And it's a lot of issues, and Lord knows we don't have enough time in the day to get to them. But one step at a time, one step at a time, one motion moving forward. And when somebody put a motion forward, don't go knocking them down like for instance, give you an example of what I'm talking about. When you say Black Lives Matter, okay, yes, Black lives do matter. That's an issue. That's one issue. Don't come back with that. Well, it didn't mean that when black on black crime. That's a separate issue, fool. Excuse me. That's a separate issue. Let's not go there. Let's deal with one and stop doing that, because that's how come you can't get things solved, resolved, and you can't have real conversation, because you always have that person to come in there and try to throw a curveball that has, and at the time it has absolutely nothing to do with it. It's
Right.
relevance to everything. Everything has a place, has a time, has a season. The conversations have to be had, but the conversation that you're having, let's deal with that conversation, and then we can move on to another conversation.
So true. That was an awesome statement there. And that is the crux of a lot of our problems. We start splintering off to other things before we get finished handling that one thing. And I'm going to do that right now because this is an issue that I want to talk about. And that is respect, and the respect that comes from the clothing that we wear, how we wear our clothes. And what keeps, I just cannot wrap my head around how we have all these years. It's been decades of people walking around showing us their underwear. Come on. Why are we doing that?
Let's
That
talk
is
to
not.
Lydia on that one, because since she has us about 10, 15 years. Come on, Lydia. Why are we doing that? Tell us about it.
I mean, I think that's a question that should have been asked to Kishana, because I mean, me personally and my kids, I try to tell them, pick up your pants. You're not going outside in bra. I'm sorry. Like that's just it's just different times. I was
But I
I
thought
was
that would have
I'm an
been. I thought.
80s baby, and my parents had an issue with that. So I can't really say too much. Um, but yeah, that's an issue.
Even
That's
when
an issue for me.
with that one, if we're talking about the males who do it, even when it was the origin of that was talked about, and They still do it. And I don't get that. So how can you know the origin of that, but you still do it? But yeah, you're gonna talk about the boy who was on the Grammys the other day with the dress on. I I don't understand that. Why is
I
that
mean,
an
that's
issue? But yeah, you can have your pants hanging to the floor, showing everybody what's back there. So that's and what it meant was access. It was started in the prisons. It meant something. It meant access. So how can you be homophobic and you doing that? That don't make sense. They too don't. And I think that's a lot of things too. Vocabulary and comprehension. I think if people actually understood what they say versus what they do, how they contradict one another, and then I think, and this is just me, sometimes to me, ignorance is real. And what is ignorance? It's real. And some
that's
people
where
choose
education
and they
plays a role.
huh?
Yeah.
And
That's
people
where
choose.
education plays a role. I mean, it's we need to really stress the fact that education is important, regardless of what you want to do. Because now I hear, my teenager, he wants to be a basketball player. Okay, you can definitely do that, but you should definitely still focus on school because you don't know what will happen. You still need to educate yourself, and I'm the first graduate from my siblings. I'm the only one that has gotten my bachelor's out of four. I'm going for my master's. So I'm big on education because we lacked it. So I
Mhm.
want to do different. I want to break the cycle. I want to try to teach my kids, like, yes, you're very smart and you're not as, ignorant, but education helps take those pieces
So,
away,
Lydia
I guess.
was smiling while you were speaking, not because of what you were saying, but because of this comment here. LMAO, when they get the crabs via underwear, they will stop. All right, Miss Lydia, you're in trouble now. Knock it off. So, anyway, sorry about that, Lydia.
Oh,
Go ahead.
but
And
that
you're
was
That's
so
okay.
absolutely
that
right.
that
We have the power
mhm.
to change our next generation, to change our family tree. So it's very important that we do that. And one of the ways that I think we can start is by, it's so funny. I was in the beauty supply store the other day with my daughter, and there were some hoop earrings. I'm telling you, if they weren't as big as the ring
Not
lights that we have, I was just like, what are they going
wow.
to do with those hula hoops as earrings? And the lady in the store said, "Oh, you know how it goes, girl. The bigger the hoop, the bigger the hoe." And I was like,
Oh,
"Oh, she
Oh, wow.
knows okay."
Oh, my
So,
goodness.
we really need to teach our children, and it's unfortunate because it should not. What we wear should not have anything to do with anything, but it does. People read your outfit and your appearance, and they make all kinds of assumptions about you. And because it is what it is, we need to address those things and not allow our children to walk around with their, I heard you mention, Lydia, something about you can't go outside in your bra. They have shirts that are made to look like you're outside in your bra. So
True.
we really need to pay attention to what we're wearing because it speaks before we even get a chance to open our mouths. Our appearance says, it speaks volumes about us, and it gives people the intentions that we may not be trying to communicate. We may have the furthest thing from what we're looking like on our minds, but we have to be more mindful of that. And we have to say to our girls, you know what, that's too low cut, that's too short, your skirt doesn't need to be up as high as your vagina. I mean, we need to be able to wear clothes that are respectable. And no, it's not fair that whatever we wear causes people to have these things, but it is what it is. So we have to teach our young ladies to dress in a way that communicates exactly what They mean to communicate. Now, if you mean to have those hoops so that you can signify, advertise that you a big hoe, then go ahead and do that. But if it's not what you mean to do, then you need to understand that that's how people see you. And as we were saying, Lydia, you said something about how much bigger the girls are now. They're well developed early. I mean, they early 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds. They look like young ladies, young women. And you see somebody 15 or 16 years old, they can pass for 21. So we have to be more mindful of our appearance, and we have to do things to minimize the message that we send if that's not what we're trying to send. And hopefully that's not the message we're trying to send. Hopefully. Go ahead.
How high do they have that skirt?
Well, high, come across the vagina, girl. Come right across there. That's how high. And then you want to know how low the shirt? The shirt's so low that it's touching the top of the vagina. So, you know, I'm just saying.
We have real conversation, but we have real conversation, but we can laugh too now because laughter is good. But that was funny.
But tell me you haven't seen it. Have you seen the shorts these days?
They're not shorts.
Our shorts look like underwear. They're walking around in compression shorts that are supposed to be under their clothes, and they walking around with them for their shorts. I mean, I'm just saying. I know I'm not the only one who noticed.
Nope.
And then here's the next thing. You got 50-year-old women walking around looking like they're 15 because they got on all these too little clothes, too short clothes, and all this stuff. Come on, man. What are you doing? You're 50. Stop it. Stop it. Like, come on. So, anyway.
They say they want to be 22.
that ship done sailed, okay? That ship is long gone.
You could look 22. You could look 22 with some decent clothes.
Yeah, you can. Absolutely. You can. Absolutely. And again, what is the message that you're trying to convey? If you dress the way that you are trying, the message that you're trying to convey, you'll be okay. Now, is it fair that somebody may take advantage of you because you have on sexy clothes? No, that's not fair, but it is because you said to them, it's okay for you to oogle at me. It's okay for you to look at me and go goo goo gaga, or whatever it is that they holler at you. You know, you got people walking around who look like they desperate to have somebody holler at them. And then when they do, they mad. Well, what you saying that to me for? Because you walking around half naked. That's why. Come on, stop it.
But you know, they really want that attention. But after they done embarrass themselves, you know, they still want that. They want that attention. Oh my God. That is too funny. Charles, when they say coochie mama, that's what they are called, 50-year-old.
So Pele says, love it. Real conversations indeed. Absolutely. Mr. Williams says, LMAO, laughing my behind off. Dr. Angie, you are funny but correct. And then we have Hoochie Mama. That's what they are called. 50 years old. So now listen, in my home, I can do what I want to do. But when I'm outside in public, I need to be mindful of that. And I'm that's just me. I'm just saying. Lord. You know, I could be wrong. And look, Mr. Williams said this too. Some clothes are to be worn in the house. Bottom line, and that's true. I can walk around looking like a hoochie mama in my house in front of my husband, but I can't be outside looking like that. My husband will be like, where you going?
What about the single ladies? You know.
Single ladies, I don't care if you're single or not. First of all, I don't want to see all that.
I mean, if you dress like that, you're just gonna find one of those men that I met one time at a bar who said that he thinks they're just
exactly.
I would not say the word, but they weren't to be taken serious. That's what he said.
Yeah.
And then guess what? You want a man to treat you with dignity and respect, but you look like that. Come on, man. Stop it. It's got to be a total package. And how you speak. You got to speak in a respectful way. Because you got women out here, girls out here, they're dropping the F-bombs like nobody's business. They sound worse than men, worse than the sailors. They cussing like sailors. They worse. And guess what? 9 times out of 10, they're doing that to fit in because they think the guys want to hear that. But when you talk to the guys don't want to hear that. They're looking at you like, really? And then guess what? They're not going to look at you as material to bring home because you don't act like material to bring home. And like I said, it's unfortunate and unfair that we have to say things like that because it shouldn't be, but it is. It is what it is. You speak like a sailor, they're going to treat you like a sailor. You dress like a hoe, they're going to treat you like a hoe. They're going to use you for your body, not for anything else. And they're playing games with you. You're just going to be one of many. But if you're looking to be taken in a respectful way and you're looking to have a respectful relationship, you've got not only to speak the part, but you got to look the part and you got to be the part. You can't do all of these things out here because you can. Just because you can doesn't mean that you should. So it's something to think about.
That's right.
I'm sorry, I went off on my tangent.
Yeah, you did that. You went from you went from Dr. Angie, Mother Angie, Big Mama Angie, Maria Angie. Then brought it back to Auntie Angie, Great Aunt Angie, Sister Angie. She did all them.
Every now and then you got to do what you got to do, right?
You got to do what you got to do. Yes, yes. And it's all right. Sometimes we need a tongue lashing. I'm for real because I think that's what we're missing too. Because nobody wants to talk about it. They wanted to say it's okay, and it's not. Even as mom, we don't want to talk about it, but we need to talk about it. And
Absolutely.
And they need to stop being so doggone sensitive. You pick and choose what you're sensitive about.
Yeah. Mr. Williams says most guys don't like nasty mouth girls or women. And you know what's funny? Now you say nasty mouth girls or women, but guess what? Men feel very comfortable saying that stuff in front of us. Why is that?
Yeah.
Now that shouldn't be either. So we're saying F words and dropping the F-bombs and kissing my this and sucking my this and all these things. And then
you've been listening to too much. You've been watching that. Oh!
And then now listen, another one. Why do we call each other the N-word? That is not cool for us to use the N-word and then not want anybody else to use it. It's not cool.
Because
our songs,
they don't.
Our music is talking about B this and H this and it's too much. And we out here, they calling you hoes and sluts, and it's too much. Anyway,
but that's because it's not nipped in the butt. That moment you have that first conversation where somebody's disrespectful, you don't say, "Hey, I don't appreciate you talking that way." You just continue the conversation.
And if you did, Lydia, if you said that, that would end all of that. Either they would walk away from you because that's not what they want from you, or they would get themselves together and not do that anymore. And that's the same thing about everything that we talked about. If I'm going out with my girl and she coming out looking like we going to the corner, and I say to her, I'm not going to be able to go with you because you look like that. That would change a whole lot of things. Because peer pressure, I noticed Mr. Williams mentioned peer pressure, but peer pressure works both ways. Peer pressure works both ways. We can talk to our friends about smoking and getting high and drinking and vaping and, all these things. We need to have those conversations. And when they're making us feel uncomfortable and feeling like we're doing something, feeling like we need to do something to fit in with them, we need to teach our kids to be bold and courageous enough to say, hey, I don't know about you, but I ain't doing all of that. My mom and dad ain't going for it. My dad will come out, my mom, whatever. Use whatever excuse you got to do. But if you feel uncomfortable, it's wrong, you've got to say it's wrong in your own little way. Then you can't sit down and have an educated, now, baby, you can't have an educated conversation with them. But you got to let them know. This is not cool. So anyway.
Don't put them on timeout. Talk to them.
Let's pick up a couple of comments and then we're going to go ahead and begin to shut it down. So it says, Esavari said, hello, I'm late and I'm glad I made it, but it is a great topic. Good stuff. And look, Pelly talking about me. She sounds on a roll.
That
I help you all out. Listen, I am the most seasoned one here today. So y'all gonna have to listen to me at this moment, okay? All right.
Yes.
There's a difference between a boy and a man. Real men don't curse in front of a woman. Amen. Amen. And we walk away from the nasty mouth person. Yep. So these are some really good comments. I want to just make sure. I want to jump on Facebook real quick and see if there's anything on there. Just Pele telling us that we are some beautiful young ladies and powerful women. Thank you so much, Pele. Any comments, Lydia? I feel like maybe I went on my soapbox too much. Anything that you want to say at this point in time?
No, I just want to say it was a pleasure and an honor speaking with you older, knowledgeable women, and I appreciate you having me.
Yes, thank you so much for joining us and for having input, because it takes, like we said, it takes a village, and it takes every generation. It takes the young generation, it takes the middle generation, and it takes the elders. It takes all of us to work together and really change some things. We've got a lot of work to do, and we got to start doing. We got lost somewhere in the sauce when we did this whole thing of letting kids run the show. Kids should never run the show. They don't get a chance to run the show because they don't know what they're doing. They're messing up.
They pay their own bills.
Yeah, exactly.
There's rules.
How help gonna say they got rights and we got to pay the bill? I beg to differ.
Exactly. We got to talk about going in their room and look. I don't want to look through their things because that's their privacy. No, baby, you don't have any privacy in my home. You have privacy in your home.
Exactly.
And I will respect your privacy when you have earned your privacy.
Right. That's what I say in my household. I say, if you slam that door is coming off those hinges.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that's a tactic that I have known to work. I'm just going to say that.
I heard quite a few people use it. Yep, it worked.
All right. So Mr. Williams says he enjoys listening to you strong women. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams. And thank you for having input and feedback into this conversation. It was important to have a man participate in this conversation. We always love having you here. And we thank you for doing so. Pele, we thank you for being here with us and for having your feedback and your input. We were laughing at you earlier today. We said that earlier when we were trying to get our technology together, we had some technical problems. We were saying, come on, we got to hurry up before Pele get on here. She's our biggest fan. She's going to fuss that we late. So Pele, thank you for always being there for us. We love you. And Esavari, thank you for joining us. And anyone who is watching who may not have communicated in the chat box or on Facebook, we want you to know that we appreciate you and we thank you. Yashica, how about if you close us out, my dear?
All right, I can do that. Well, we had a juicy conversation tonight, a great conversation, a conversation that don't stop the conversation here. Please take it into your living room, into your dining room table. I know we still have those rooms. That's the one that got that table in there. Sit down at it and have these conversations among your family. You know that we used to have this thing on the wall called a telephone. You used to dial, call somebody else up and talk about the conversation that we talked about. Share it among the masses, and even whether you agree with us or not agree, spike a conversation, but let it be a mature adult conversation that you can have. It's okay to disagree. That's fine. You can agree to disagree, but have a conversation, because if we don't communicate, then we do nothing, nowhere. We're just stuck, stalemate, and we don't need that. And as I always say throughout the week, do something different from somebody, and as long as you're on this side of the dirt, you can be better today than you was yesterday. And next week, well, I'm going to go ahead. We're going to have a special guest next week as well. We're going to be talking about the COVID-19 and what we're going to talk to someone who actually went through the actual illness And so that's going to be interesting next week. And we love to have guests. So now, if you guys have something juicy, great topic, let us know. You can drop it in the comments. Like, share, please. And again, thank you for joining us.
Awesome. 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 Yes. Please like, share, and subscribe. We appreciate you. We want you to know that we are grateful to have you be part of our show, because without having you all, it's just Yashica and I having a conversation.
And we do that enough.
And we do that all the time, but we want to have a conversation that is A, meaningful, and B, that is able to get across to many. We want to be able to have those conversations here that spark conversations outside of here in your own homes. So we are looking forward to our conversation next week, which is about COVID-19. And we thank you once again for joining us. And we want to say, again, like, share, and subscribe. God bless you all. We look forward to next week. Enjoy your conversations. Lydia, thank you so much. And I just want you guys to know that Lydia, I gave her the name Lydia today because I was jacking up her name. Her name is Lydia. Did I say it right?
You did. You got it.
All right.
Thank
You
you.
say it for me.
Lydia.
Say it for me. Good night,
Lydia.
everyone.
Have a good night. Thank
Good
you.
night.
All right. Good night. We love you.